So last week I outlined very briefly the Four Truths, and I spoke about the two levels, the noble level and the ennobling level. Tonight, as mentioned just earlier, I'd like to talk about the two levels of the Eightfold Path as well, which is the fourth noble truth, or the fourth ennobling truth. And usually it's thought about like Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Sila refers to ethics, Samadhi usually refers to meditation, and Panya usually refers to wisdom. And it's spoken of in that sequence because that's the way it's practiced. We establish the foundation of our meditation with ethics, then based on ethics, having a clear conscience and a level of composure and mental stability, we embark on the practice of meditation, and then that produces wisdom. So in the text, however, in the suttas, when the Buddha spoke about the Eightfold Path, he began it with wisdom, actually. The Eightfold Path is like this. It's three components. The wisdom component involves right view and right intention. The ethics component involves right speech, action, and livelihood. And the meditation component involves right energy or right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And as I mentioned last week, the term right is used here as a translation of the term samma. Samma has quite a few meanings, but as mentioned last week, the one I like the most is right, as in the right direction versus the wrong direction. So the right direction towards awakening, the right direction towards wisdom and insight. So right view, generally it's considered as, which is the first factor, it's generally considered as having insight and understanding into the way things actually are. And the way things actually are incorporated in three characteristics of existence, three universal characteristics of existence. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Anicca refers to impermanence. Dukkha refers to suffering, and in here in this context, it refers to how impermanent, conditioned things are unable to bring about enduring happiness, are unable to satisfy because they're impermanent. So dukkha is the second characteristic of universal characteristic of existence. The third universal characteristic of existence is anatta, often translated as not self, but it also means emptiness. And it refers to how there's no one thingness that's behind all this. There's no one thing that we can find that is enduring through all this process. That things arise and change because of conditions, causes and conditions, and that they arise and change in an interdependent manner. They are co-arising. So they're the three characteristics of existence, and wrong view means not being able to see these things. Wrong view refers to taking as permanent that which is not permanent, taking as sukha or happiness that which cannot give happiness, and taking as self that which no self can be found. So that's right intention, that's right view, that's the first factor. The second factor on the path is right intention. And right intentions have three aspects, I suppose I could call them, 3 groups. The first group is intentions of renunciation. Renunciation here means one renounces a gross pleasure for a higher happiness. Ultimately, it's the highest happiness of Nibbana. It is giving up something gross for something better. And I often interpret it as simply letting go of our kilesa, letting go of releasing our mental distortions. Second group that I understand is as intentions of goodwill. Here, intentions of goodwill mean intentions of warm benevolence and compassion. And the third group of these right intentions refer to harmlessness, intentions of harmlessness. And in many respects, you could consider this as intentions of compassionate intentions. So you don't want to cause harm with anybody. So there's right view and right intention. Those 2 factors pertain to the wisdom group of the Eightfold Path. The next group is the ethics group, and it's right speech, right action, right livelihood. And I think this could be these 3 groups of these 3 factors of ethics could be summarised by the 5 precepts, which you probably all very well know, but I'm going to repeat them nonetheless. One of the first precept is usually training in the avoidance of harming living things or killing living beings. The second one is usually restraint in taking that which does not belong to you. In other words, stealing or acquiring things that are not yours. And taking possession of things. The third one is speech that is helpful and not harmful. In other words, restraining from speech that is divisive, deceitful, harmful, hurtful, unconstructive, and just plain old lying. So that's the third precept. Fourth precept relates to restraint in sensual pleasures that cause harm. Usually it relates to sexual misconduct, not having sexual misconduct, which is sexual conduct that someone is hurt by, or someone hurts someone or harms someone. And the fifth precept is restraint in consuming intoxicants that cloud the mind, for obvious reasons. Because if we fall down on that one, we fall down on all of them possibly. So now when you have this composure, as I mentioned before, when you have this stability of mind, this foundation of ethics, one is more able and more one has the foundation to cultivate the mind. And the way we cultivate our mind is with energy, mindfulness and concentration, or samadhi. So energy or effort, it's sometimes called virya, relates to, sometimes it's courageous because it requires that energy to face up to the things that we'd rather avoid. I think the root word virya is one of the root words for bravery. So, but the way I understand energy is this perseverance and vigour and energy behind moving along the path. So with that energy, we're able to cultivate mindfulness, and there's many descriptions of mindfulness around. I like Anala's description as soft, awake presence, which is really lovely. And sati is the Pali term. Of course, sati means memory, and often the term remembering comes into being in terms of when we're explaining on describing mindfulness. And I really like the way Bhikkhu Bodhi describes mindfulness in one psychological text, actually, as remembering to bring attention to immediate experience with care and discernment. It is this tracking and seeing along with, actually Satipatthana refers to seeing along with or tracking experience. So mindfulness, when we can bring our awareness to a situation, then we gather our attention around it. And we're talking about samadhi here now. Samadhi refers to the gathering and the collecting of and the focusing of mental energies so that they're unified, going in the one direction, and they're falling onto one thing. So this combination of energy, mindfulness and samadhi working together allows us to see deeply into phenomena, allows us to see deeply into what's going on in our lives, and it allows wisdom to arise. And here we go back on this path. The path is usually considered as, the 8 factors on the path are usually considered as 8 spokes on a wheel, all reinforcing one another and all equally important in the turning of this wheel. And this wheel turns and gains momentum towards liberation. So you may ask, well, what about the ennobling Eightfold Path? What's this about? Well, as you may know, I'm a clinical psychologist and I often work with people with all sorts of psychological issues. And I feel that we travel along the Eightfold Path together, the ennobling Eightfold Path. They may not be becoming complete, they may not realise Nibbana, but they are realising some things. And it begins with a kind of a recognition or insight into a particular pattern that may be unhelpful or harmful or destructive. So with that realisation, and I will call that right ennobling view, right ennobling insight, they will rouse an intention to maybe stop doing that or reduce the tendencies to feed into it. So what happens then is, with a firm resolve to act in ways that reduce the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome, one then embarks on acting in ways that reinforce that. So we have right view as insight into a pattern, right intention as making a resolve or a commitment or a decision to act in wholesome ways. Then right speech, right action, and right livelihood are ways that we live that out. We live and act and behave in accordance with our good understanding and our best intentions. And then when we do that, we have the mental composure to investigate further, to settle our minds, to settle our perceptions, to see deeply into ourselves and then that reinforces our insights, and so the wheel of Dharma moves on. So that is my brief talk about the Eightfold Path at both ennobling and noble levels, and I thank you for your attention. May we all travel on the path and find freedom both noble and ennobling.
Thank you.
Sadhu. Thank you very much, Malcolm, for